Chag Sameach. So today I'm going to do something, and we're going to do something that I and we have done together here many times, but not for quite a long time. I'm going to ask for some logistical assistance in distributing these amazing packets, source sheets. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go. Okay. And so we're going to do some learning together on a particular issue. And so I realized after, of course, the source sheets and packets were printed up, I wanted to provide a little bit of context because we're going to do some learning about the Kotel, about the Western Wall, and about a political issue that does impact us here, and in terms of religious observance, especially really world Jewry, all of us around the world. And it's particularly poignant that it's happening, that all of this is coming together around the holiday of Shavuot, and I wanted to explain a little bit why. And I brought this source, unfortunately it's not in the source sheet, but a little bit of information from the Western Wall Heritage Foundation, which explains that at the Western Wall, the holiday of Shavuot is an amazing time for people in Jerusalem to celebrate Shavuot, when people, over 100,000 people, and this was from 3 years ago, over 100,000 people visited the Western Wall Plaza during the holiday of Shavuot. And the peak time for gathering is at the morning prayer. This is traditionally done, and that's it. We have an amazing attendance here today, so if people are able to share with another person, that would probably be good. I would recommend, though, I know some people like to just listen with their ears and not their eyes, but if you want to listen just with your ears and not follow along with your eyes, that is okay. But I am going to reference a couple of photographs, which is one of the main reasons why I brought the source sheet in the packet, because they used to say long before social media that a picture was worth 1,000 words, and I felt that saying coming back as I was preparing for today. So now perhaps the value is different, but it's still true that in Jerusalem, the way that people celebrate Shavuot in this very special way, and actually I have not been there to do it myself. I've celebrated several holidays in Israel, but have not been there for Shavuot yet, and so I haven't experienced this myself. But at sunrise, that's the earliest possible time you can daven shacharit. So the idea is that you stay up all night studying Torah, you walk to the Western Wall, and then you daven the morning prayer at sunrise as early as possible. And it's just a beautiful experience, and it's a pilgrimage that is really special in Jerusalem. So the problem is the issue on the table, and if we want to turn to, let's see, or if people had read the emails that I sent in my Parsha column, both in this past week and the last week of February, there's a bill going through the Knesset. It was proposed originally in February, and the idea has been out there for a while, but it was proposed in February at the Knesset to not just bar any non-Orthodox prayer at the Western Wall, but also to punish it with 7 years in jail. So that means that if we pray here, pray like we were praying here at the Western Wall, we would be liable for 7 years in prison. So this is something that, of course, everyone who prays and is Jewish and is not Orthodox is thinking a lot about, especially right now. And so going to our source sheet, this source sheet was prepared by my colleague, Rabbi Noam Kornsgold at the Rabbinical Assembly. I did modify it a little bit, and I also kept some of his wording, which we love. So, okay, this is called the Holy Space Shared People, the Kotel. It's for Shavuot this year, just prepared. The original source sheet was like 27 pages long, so thankfully we're only going to do a little bit of it right now. And so this first section is called "It's a space that contains and sustains all Israel." And so it starts with a verse from Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, which we traditionally read on the Shabbat in the middle of Passover. And reading the English, "My beloved is like a gazelle or like a young stag. There he stands behind our wall, gazing through the window, peering through the lattice." And so kind of the context here is that Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, this is this love song between God and Israel, or between a man and a woman, or between two people. We can interpret in a lot of different ways, but really this is about love and intimacy and connection. So then we have our second source, Shir HaShirim Rabbah. This is a midrash on Song of Songs. There he stands behind our wall. What does this mean? Well, of course, it means the western wall of the temple. Didn't you understand that when you read it the first time? Why? And this is the style of Midrash, of course. Why is this the case? Because the Holy Blessed One swore that it would never be destroyed. And so one of the things that is so special about the Kotel, for those of us who have seen pictures, or for those of us who have been there in person, or perhaps those of us who will be there in person in the future, even though we haven't been there in person yet, this is the remnant of the ancient holy temple built by King Solomon in Jerusalem. This is to say that this is a historic site is an incredible understatement. And so this is something that has been standing for generations and thousands of years. And so we have the western wall of the temple, which still stands. It was not destroyed, even though the rest of the temple is destroyed. So gazing through the window, this is the merit of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our ancestors. Peering through the lattice, this is the merit of the matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So we have in this reference, we have from the verse, chapter 2, verse 9 in Song of Songs, we're talking about the western wall. We're talking about our matriarchs and our patriarchs, and how all of these things, obviously our matriarchs and patriarchs, very important to us. We reference them in our prayer multiple times every day, but also connected to this in importance is the western wall. Okay, bringing us to our third source, Vayikra Rabbah. The length of the courtyard shall be 100 cubits and the width 50 by 50. So this is describing the dimensions of the tabernacle in the book of Exodus. Rabbi Yossi bar Chalafta said, the length of the courtyard was 100 cubits, yet all Israel stood within it. How could this possibly be enough space for all these people? Rather, this is one of the places where a small space held a great multitude. So this is it's a little bit magical, which is cool. So too in the temple, in our holy temple, as we learned, people would stand crowded together, yet bow down with ample space. There was room enough for everyone to do what they needed to do. Rabbi Shmuel bar Evia said in the name of Rav Acha, there was a space of 4 cubits between each and every person, a cubit on each side, so that no one would hear the voice of another praying. So we have this idea that some might have learned about Daled Amot, personal space for prayer. So everyone, when they're praying, is supposed to have a little bit of personal space, and you don't invade someone's personal space while they're praying, to have that focus. So not only did people stand crowded together, but in those moments of prayer where they needed the 4 cubits of personal space, the Daled Amot, they magically had it. Okay, and so it will be in the future, as it is said, at that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall gather to it. So we do have this concept of Jerusalem being a place not just for Jewish prayer, but for everyone to pray in the time in the future when everyone recognizes God. Okay, let's turn the page. These discussion questions, shout out to my colleague, Rabbi Noam Kornsgold. This is you will read this and I did not write these questions myself. And I'm going to go to the second question just because I love the word, or this isn't the word, this is the phrase, vis-a-vis, which I don't think I've ever said intentionally in a sentence myself. In both the original verse and in the Midrash, who is the antecedent of our? So who are we talking about when we say our? What implications vis-a-vis inclusivity and the Kotel derive from this word usage? And I love this, we're leading us in a specific direction with his question, of course, saying that this is the Kotel is and should be a space that contains and sustains all Israel. If there is magically room for a crowded space to have everyone have perfect personal space when they need it in prayer, isn't there room for everyone here? It's like that Western shootout phrase. It's like, this town isn't big enough for the both of us. It's kind of like the Kotel is big enough for all Israel in all our diversity. And I think that when the Jewish people are diverse, it's both beautiful and challenging, because we look at the person next to us, they do things a little bit differently than us. And obviously my way is superior, right? Like there's a little piece of us that thinks that all the time. So being, not just tolerant, but embracing of people doing things really different than us. I think that's one of the core issues of what this is about, and one of the things that we as a people are struggling with right now. Okay. So now let's go to the bottom of page 2, sacred space in a democratic state. And so this source is from Rabbi David Golinkin, who is like the Elliot Dorff of the conservative movement in Jerusalem. He's a wonderful teacher, and I've met him a couple of times in person. And I think this is an interesting statement. It's about the mechitza and the synagogue. So I don't know if all of us have had an experience diving in a space with a mechitza, with a screen that separates men from women. There's also a modern concept of we have 2 mechitzas, so we have men on one side, women on the other side, and the middle part is for anyone who doesn't identify with either or who wants to be in a mixed space. So there's men, women, and mixed or everyone. But the traditional mechitza is men on one side, women on the other. And so we have this modern kind of interpretation that is trying to be more inclusive. But what he's talking about is men on one side, women on the other, which is the traditional way of doing a mechitza. There's already enough alienation and loneliness in modern families. The synagogue should be a place which brings families together and not one which separates them. So this is I guess I never really thought of a mechitza in prayer this way. I've had several or many experiences davening with a mechitza, and it's different. I'm glad I do this most of the time, but I find value in that way of doing things as well. But I'm thinking about this in a new way because my husband and I are planning to go to a family wedding next month on the East Coast. This is one of the parts of the family that's very Orthodox, and it'll be my first time going to a wedding where all of the seating, including the meal afterwards, is separate. So I will not be able to sit next to my husband at all during even the meal of this, and I'm thinking this is going to be a new experience for me. And this is something that I know that some of us in this room and some of us watching have probably had this experience before, but I'm like, wow, this is different. Yeah, it's a whole different vibe. And so this idea of separation or not separation, it's very, very different. And when you're in a situation that you're not familiar with, it can feel very, very I think off-putting, to put it mildly. It can be like, whoa, what's going on? And I think this is true for either people who are used to a mechitza, separate seating, who come into a mixed seating space, or vice versa. So let's turn to page 3, because I think these are two pictures, two photos that I think are incredibly important. So we have source 5 and source 6. So 2 men and 2 women standing in front of the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. So source 6, Jews in front of the Western Wall, Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. And so these are in the early 1900s. And the thing that we're trying to communicate here, including these on the source sheet, is like, A, this did actually happen, and B, there didn't used to be separation between men and women at the Western Wall. It didn't used to be. So the way it is right now is definitely not the way it has always been. Okay, source 7, Israeli Declaration of Independence, obviously an excerpt. The state of Israel will be open for Jewish immigration and for the ingathering of the exiles. It will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace, as envisioned by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions. And so I think that I imagine most or all of us are reading this and are thinking like, wow, aspirational, right? Like where we can think of the experiences that we've had, and especially, I think the things we've heard about Israel, I would always encourage us to check that against someone who's actually lived or spent time there. But I'm thinking about the times that I've spent in Israel, and I'm reading this and I'm thinking, yes, in some situations, this is definitely happening. In other situations, it's a little aspirational, right? But I think that our grand statements, like our declarations of independence, we want them to be aspirational, and we want to continue to aspire towards them, even though it's not necessarily so easy all the time. Okay, so let's look at source 8, resolutions of the Zionist Congress, the 39th Zionist Congress, which was less than a year ago, resolution number 5, opening access to the egalitarian Kotel family wall to the general public. So let me explain a little bit what this is about, and I think we do have a couple of photos of this later on. I'm on page 4, source 8, page 4, source 8. And there are a couple of photos of this later on in the packet, but I won't direct you to those right now. I'll just talk about it a little bit. So there's the main section that the Western Wall Heritage Foundation, if you go to their website and you look at the Kotel, there's like the main section where the men are on this side, the women are on this side, and that's like what people think of as the Kotel. But can I just get a show of hands for those who are here in person? Who has been to the egalitarian Kotel ever? Okay, so some of us. So this section is kind of like, you exit the main section, you go off to the side, you go through the thing, you go down the thing, and depending on when we've been there, it's in various states of repair, disrepair, and construction. But this place on the Kotel, the egalitarian Kotel, the family wall, this is important for people coming from around the world to the Kotel, especially for smachot, for joyous occasions like a bar or bat mitzvah. So you have a situation where a family might be Orthodox, but they want to celebrate their simcha in this particular egalitarian place, so that, for example, the great-grandmother of the bar mitzvah can be close by and hear the child read. And so this access to the egalitarian Kotel is, I think, relevant not just to those of us who are not Orthodox and religious, but also those of us who are Orthodox and religious who might want access to this kind of space for particular reasons. Okay, whereas this area is an integral part of the Kotel, a sacred and central site for the Jewish people as a whole, and whereas among those seeking access are families from Israel and around the world, so not just from Israel, but also around the world, who wish to conduct egalitarian, pluralistic ceremonies as part of their connection to the Kotel and the Jewish tradition. So we're affirming that being Orthodox is not the only way to be religious. Therefore, the Zionist Congress resolves to recognize the right of all streams of Judaism, Orthodox, conservative, Reform, otherwise, and the general public to conduct ceremonies and visit all parts of the site, and to work in Israeli and international arenas to ensure that activities at the Kotel reflect all shades of the Jewish people and the values of equality, pluralism, and connection to tradition. So basically, the idea, this is back to this town ain't big enough for the both of us. Like, we're trying to move away from that idea and say that it's not, there's more religious diversity in our people than either we're Orthodox or we don't pray at all. There's all sorts of shades and streams and ways of practicing, and we want to make space for all of them. Okay, and so the last thing that I want to look at here together today is the very next page. It's not numbered 5, but I guess it's the page after page 5, and it's the photo of Dr. Yitzhar Hess on the one side and ultra-Orthodox worshipers on the other side. And I feel like, and I will acknowledge this photo is from an article in a particular publication, The Times of Israel, which I assume some of us read regularly and others of us would never even read that publication. So I take from that what you will, but I want to show this photo because a couple of reasons. Yitzhar Hess has been here to our community, not just visiting us on Zoom during the pandemic when he connected to Adat Shalom, I think for the first time that I'm aware of, but also he was here on our Bima speaking about the issues that are going on for Masorti conservative movement in Israel and making that connection with us and asking for our support. And so we see him on the one side not shouting, right? And we see people on the other side shouting a lot. And this is something that I personally have experienced at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, where I have been there for women's services in the women's section, and I was not shouting at people, and people were shouting a lot at me. And I think the idea here is that there is room for everyone, and our side, the conservative movement side, the Masorti movement side, believes that, and other sides do not. And that's very challenging. It's very challenging. And I think that, I'm not trying to say, and I don't think Dr. Hess or anyone in the Masorti movement is trying to say that anyone else's way of doing things is wrong, but it's difficult that that's where our stance is. And others are saying the way that we're doing things not only is wrong, but is punishable by time in prison. So I hope, to wrap up our learning, I'm going to ask a couple of things. First, I'm going to ask that people continue to reflect upon this as we finish our service and hopefully reflect with each other and with me at Kiddush afterwards. And also, because we're not going to be speaking about this packet tomorrow at services, but people will be here tomorrow, if you are able to please leave this packet somewhere on campus so that hopefully someone who will be here tomorrow who isn't here today will have the chance to see it. And if you want to if you're like, I want this source to take home, please email me after Chag, and I will make sure that you get either a digital or a paper copy, because this is something that I want to make sure we raise awareness about, so that those of us who want to sign petitions and take action to say, okay, we want to make sure that there's space for our way of praying in Jerusalem can do so. So if you're able to continue this conversation with one another and with me at Kiddush and leave the packet somewhere on campus so someone with a curious eye can say, what's that about, and spread the word that way, I'd appreciate all of those things. And Chag Shavuot Sameach, and thanks for the learning today.